Today, we'll be going over common strategies for when you are buying and selling at the same time. This is something that is incredibly stressful sometimes, and a lot of people don't really understand what the options are when you are both selling your own home and then buying that next home. We'll definitely go over common fears as to what if there's no houses for me to buy in a incredibly hot seller's market, or what about interest rates, and kind of dive into that a little bit more as well, so that way you can understand and be a bit more educated on what this process would look like and also what your options are. My name is William Singh. I'm a local real estate agent in the Portland, Oregon area. If you ever have questions whatsoever about this, feel free to reach out. I'll make sure to have my contact information below, and let's dive right into this content. Before we dive into a bunch of the common strategies, one thing to note is that you have to think of these as tools in your tool belt. And there might be specific tools that will work better for you than some other ones. So when we're kind of going through this, kind of understand a little bit more about what ones might be a better fit for you. And maybe we can use a combination of these different strategies or maybe different nuances. One of the things that I do recommend is that you talk to an agent. A lot of times there's going to be some maybe nuances in your particular situation that might be a better fit, depending on what that is something where you want to talk to an expert in your market to really understand what would be the best strategy for you. Now, with that in mind, I understand that some of my viewers will probably not be in the Portland, Oregon area. So if you ever need recommendations in terms of who to go to when you are across the country or something else, feel free to reach out. I can always connect you with a local professional that I personally vet. So with that in mind, let's dive into those common strategies. So with this, there's usually three main strategies or three overall strategies that you're kind of looking at when you are looking at this. I'll make sure to add a bonus strategy when you're kind of looking at this at the end, but just something to note is that when we're diving into the first option, which is to sell, then buy. So the first common strategy that I'll be kind of talking about is that you can sell, then you can buy. So with this, you would get everything ready for selling your home and then have a place to rent out. And this is something where you give yourself a lot more time to be in that place of searching for a home, and will allow you to kind of see what's out there and really wait until that market has either cooled off a little bit or you find that place that you are wanting. This also allows you to be in a much better financial position typically, because of the fact that you will be getting the money from your equity that you have in your original home. Now, one of the things that this does bring up is the fact that you are going to have to move twice. And some people do not like that. And again, that's something that's completely up to you. And it's going to be very different for someone who's been moving every 2 to 3 years to that next place versus someone who has been living in a home for 30 years, and having to pack up 30 years of stuff is definitely a much harder situation. So with that in mind, this is again one of the tools that you can use, or one of the potential options you can use in order to get what you're wanting in terms of moving up to that next house or maybe downsizing to that next house. Second common strategy is to sell and buy. So you can kind of do this of two ways. One of them is going to be getting rent back. Rent back is where when you sell your home, you tell the buyer that, hey, I want to be staying in this home for X amount of days. With conventional financing, you can really only max that out to about 59 days. So you have about 60 days total once your transaction closes to find that next place, get it under contract, and then move into it. So just something to kind of keep in mind, that it does put you on a much more time constraint or much more hurried pace. And if that's something that you're not looking for, then this might not be the option for you. Another potential option for you is to be contingent. So this is where you get your house ready and you are trying to get everything to be sold. You put it, or you get it on the market, and then you start looking at other offers or looking at making offers on other places. Now, this is a great option when it is more of a buyer's market. When it's in more of a very hot seller's market, it does kind of limit you, or it does not look as quite appealing to that seller when you are trying to buy their place. Just kind of keep that in mind and understand that you want to talk to your agent a little bit more about what are the best options given the current circumstances of that time. Another pro of this is the fact that you don't have to move as often. So with this, you'll only usually have to move once, and it's always good to have backup plans, so have a place to rent if need be, but one of those things where you can just go into a short-term rental if need be. Now, the third most common strategy is to buy and then sell. So this really relieves a lot of tension in the sense of having to get everything ready for your home to be on the market, and helps you have a little bit more breathing room. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can go about this. One is using a bridge loan. And what this loan is, it's a special loan product that many different types of banks will have, but it will essentially allow you to leverage the current equity you have in your home to then buy that next home. Now, a major downside of this is the fact that you have to have two loans at the same time, and you're paying for two mortgages for the same time. Now, this might work for some people who have a little bit more cash in the bank and are able to accept that loss during that time, because it will relieve a lot more stress. Again, this is one of those things where you're going to want to talk through things with your agent to really understand what's going to be the best option for you. Another second thing that has kind of come up recently is being able to work with specialty loans. And these specialty loans will kind of allow you to become a cash buyer. Now, this is one of those things that has more recently popped up in 2022, and where you have knock or fly homes as one where they will essentially loan you a little bit more, or will make you a cash buyer, and you usually have to pay a lot more in terms of fees and whatnot. But once you sell your home, they would refinance. So you're usually taking a lot more on in terms of fees. Now, overall, this strategy is just typically a little bit more costly, but it does allow you to have a lot more freedom with the time you sell and things of that nature, and getting everything ready, and you're not feeling as rushed. So whatever works kind of best for you and best for your finances, that's again one of those things where you're going to want to talk to an agent that you can kind of trust and make sure that you're finding the best options for you, and then also having backup strategies for that. Now, the fourth option is something that is not actually when you are selling your old home, but if you were to keep your home. So this is one of those things that has become a little bit more common, is where you will turn your home into a rental or some sort of way to increase the income from that property. Now, just note that when it comes to single family homes, you really are not optimizing it as a rental, or it's not optimized as a rental, because of the fact that in terms of investments, you're usually not going to be able to make up the difference depending on how much you have in terms of that monthly mortgage payment. Note that that also comes along with a bunch of different things of being able to have property management, or are you going to self-manage, dealing with a little bit more repairs, dealing with the landlord-tenant laws that are in place. So again, one of those things that is not always great for everyone, but is an option you should understand a little bit more. Now, with this, you can pull out a HELOC, or kind of get that HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit, to then use that equity that you did have in your home to then buy that next place. So this will kind of give you the funds needed to get the down payment for the next place. Again, you're going to want to talk to your agent and then also a lender to make sure that this will be actually viable. Sometimes it's not going to work out or pencil out. So again, just make sure to always double check with those individuals to help make sure that you're finding the best route for yourself. Now, with all these strategies, there's still a couple major fears that do come up for a lot of people. So just know that you are not alone. And one of the major questions that does pop up is, if it is a seller's market, what if I can't find the next home? Especially when there is not a lot of inventory. And this is really where you're going to want to be talking with your agent and understanding, like, okay, if we have this much equity, or we're able to use these things, what is the likelihood of us being able to find that next home? And it might be something where you can start looking into maybe new construction, or you can start looking into other options that might be a better fit for you, or would be something where you can understand a little bit more about how much inventory is in this specific area, because of the fact that there are so many sub-markets within the Portland area. It might be a little bit different in terms of inventory and things of that nature. So with that, if you do have a good agent and you do understand a lot more about what's the potentials for everything, you'll be able to have a much more educated guess. So for example, you might have, let's say that your home is in a very hot area and you know it's going to sell. This is just one of those things where if you have enough money, or if you have the funds available for you, you can use maybe one of these special loan programs where you can become a cash buyer. And this would then allow you to kind of go out and find that next place very quickly, and would also kind of give you the time frame needed in order to actually get that next home. And with that, you can also talk to your agent about, hey, what's the likelihood of us being able to get a home that we're wanting that's with these specifications, things of that nature. And they should have a pretty good idea of like, okay, these do come on the market every so often. And if it's something where it's an extremely custom home or things of that nature, then that might be a different kind of thing to kind of navigate. But just know it's something where you're going to want to talk to someone to understand what those potential options are, because in my opinion, you should be educating yourself as much as possible and understand as much as possible in terms of what your goals are, and making sure that you have the strategies and the people behind it to make that a reality. Another common fear is interest rates, and just know that these will fluctuate throughout the time frame that you're looking at, and we don't have a crystal ball. But when it comes to interest rates, just know that if you've locked in a very low interest rate, you'll most likely be paying maybe a little bit higher interest rate or mortgage payment when it comes to upgrading to that next house. If you're downgrading, it might actually decrease because you're not needing quite as much space. So just know that when the interest rates do come back down, you can always refinance. Another common question is my property good enough? And this is one of those things that, again, you'd want to talk to an agent about. Okay, what do you need to improve, or what's the minimum you need to improve to get this price range, or what's, if you were to do this level of renovation, you'd get this price range. And they'll be able to kind of guide you through and understand a lot more about what would be needed in order to be successful in this market. Now, the market also constantly changes. So it's really good to have someone in your corner to say, hey, right now, this is kind of the best plan. These are the other potential scenarios that we need to be planning for, and being very proactive about what might happen. And when you have that strategy, it makes things a lot easier for you as the seller to understand what's needed and what you're willing to do. One other pro tip to add in here is to talk to your CPA. This is one of those things where when you do sell your place, you may incur capital gains tax. And with this, there are a few exceptions. So always talk to your CPA as well when you're kind of talking about selling your place, to really understand what those financial implications might be. So that way you are much more prepared for whenever those things do occur, or you're ready to handle them as needed. If you need any help whatsoever and you are not in the Portland metro area, feel free to reach out to me, and I can certainly connect you with my network of agents across the country. And it's one of those things where I want to make sure that you are working with the best people as possible and understand what your options are. If you found any of this content helpful, it would be wonderful if you could like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.